Let's go.
What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Fuego y Sonrisa podcast.
Let's go!
Yeah. Would you like to introduce our...
Oh, man. It's the man, it's the myth, it's the legend. It's somebody who I've been watching for a while because I think he brings a lot of inspiration. And you kind of remind me, the person that we're introducing today reminds me of people like Jocko Willink, Jordan Peterson, people who just want to move the direction more towards a positive and reclaim masculinity. So please welcome Kevin Ray Wilder. Woo! Let's go.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm flattered you compared me to those two guys because I really look up to both of them. So I wouldn't quite, not that it's a competition, but, I definitely wouldn't quite put myself to their level yet, but I'm getting there, and no matter what, even if by some weird metric I get to their level, I don't know how you measure that. There'll still be people that I look up to as mentors in a way, regardless. And I think, it's pretty interesting about YouTube is, you can almost kind of have these, like, for lack of a better word, like a parasocial mentor almost. Maybe that's not a good way of putting it, but basically, like, there's these people that I've really impacted me in a profound way that I've never met, but I watch so much and consume so much of their content. And, I hope that I could be the same for some other people, and even for some of those people to eventually meet them one day and, hang out with them and stuff. So thanks for having me. I'm pumped to be here.
Right on.
Yeah. So just for the people who are new to you, how did you get into the work that you do? We know that your purpose is to help men become greater versions of themselves. So how did that all come about?
I've always been interested in self-development because it's something that I greatly required myself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I give off this impression, maybe I don't, but I'm naturally a very introverted person. And so when I was very young, especially in high school, more specifically, I was like a mute, It was kind of weird because I wasn't necessarily one of the nerdy kids because I was very athletic, but like I just wouldn't talk to people. Like I would always get in my head. And it's because I had really not that much sense of self, and I would let the outside world just affect my emotions too much, and I'd overthink things. And so naturally I got into self-development because of that. So my first outlet from that standpoint, I was always like the skinny kid, was fitness, right? So my self-development journey kind of started with fitness. And, you get to a certain point with fitness, you get diminishing returns. There's only so much muscle you can build, naturally, so much strength. And eventually I started to question, okay, well, why am I so obsessed with the gym in the first place? Right. It starts to make you question, okay, well, what's the thing that's actually driving me? And so initially at first, me at this point being, my late teens, early 20s, if I was honest with myself, it was girls, right? Because I just struggled with girls my entire life because of my shyness. And then so I was like, all right, well, now I'm going to start doing things like study pickup books and all this, study game, whatever, to try to get girls. And then once I was able to do that, then the similar thing that happened with fitness happened with girls. I was like, why do I want to chase girls? Oh, maybe there's something deeper that I'm trying to. And so, I've noticed that just within my own life, it's kind of been this natural progression of, when I solve what, as I perceive as some sort of problem, it's not necessarily a new one arises, but you get a bit more perspective of like, what are the true things that are driving you, and it's eventually gotten up to the point now where it's basically down to philosophy itself. Right. And that's why a big thing that I cover, probably the main thing arguably, is philosophy now on my channel, more specifically virtue ethics. I mean, we can get into that in this podcast here, but yeah, that's kind of I guess the very TLDR, Kevin Ray Wilder origin story. I guess it started with fitness, and then, at this point it's up to philosophy. And I think what's really cool is that it's a never-ending journey. And, specifically with me studying philosophy, I just realized that, like, I'm not even like if there was a video game of philosophy and studying it, I'm not even like 1% completed. So I have so much more to go. And the more I learn and discover, the more I understand how much I don't know. And so hopefully with my channel, it's not, what I try to do with it is try to just have people ask the right questions. I try not to be too much of like standing on my soapbox preaching at people. I understand maybe it can come across that way sometimes, but yeah, I think, you know, to wrap a little bit of a bow on this, I guess, one of my biggest inspirations is Friedrich Nietzsche. And Nietzsche believes that any philosopher, whatever he talks about, is basically a direct reflection of the things he's going through in his own life. Right. So in a way, I'm kind of opening myself up to the audience, whether they like me or not, based on the things that I talk about. If that makes sense. Anyway, that's the long TLDR of Kevin Ray Water, I guess.
Nice. I had a question. So when we're like, I guess, managing the manosphere, they have all these terms: alpha, beta, sigma, black pill, red pill. I guess our audience might be a little bit more diverse. So when people think of alpha, they might think of either like the leader of the wolf pack, or like the leader of the chimpanzees. So in how would you describe like an alpha?
I mean, first of all, I try not to use the terms alpha, beta, whatever too much, because there's already automatically a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
I understand I'm technically part of the manosphere, but I'm trying to influence people outside of it that might have a certain preconceived idea of what the manosphere is. The manosphere simply to me is just anybody who talks about men's issues. That's it. Right. Or tries to help men specifically. But it's funny when I look at my YouTube analytics, actually, and in my comment section, believe it or not, about like 20% of my audience is women. So a lot of the things that I talk about really aren't just exclusive to men, you know? And so anyway, all that being said, the term alpha, I look at it as sort of like an ideal for a man to strive toward, right? I do kind of accept that manosphere definition of like the guy that all the girls want to bang and the guy that all the guys want to be like.
Yeah.
I do sort of accept that definition, because I think, you know, all things being equal, that's probably a good thing to strive for, right? In the sense of, you know, do girls want to bang you because you're a high quality, cool guy? And do other guys want to be like you because they think you're a high quality person? You know, it depends on who's making those value judgments, right? So that's why I differentiate actually between the dark alpha and the light alpha in my videos, where the dark alpha is somebody who is very dominant, sure, but he gets to a position of power and authority through using dark triad traits, right? Like, you know, Machiavellianism, narcissism, psychopathy, basically just doing whatever he needs to gain power. And I think I definitely don't preach that stuff, because I think that's probably going to make the world a worse place.
Yeah.
But technically it is an effective mating strategy, even though you're ruling through fear, I guess. I wouldn't say technically ruling, but more so, you know, you're just doing whatever you can, whatever's in your power to get what you want. But I think that's a short-term game. That's a young man's game, you know, where eventually the bad things that you do are going to catch up to you. And again, with me, even though I'm not like a huge YouTuber, I still have, you know, close to almost like 20,000 subscribers. I'm at like 17,000 now. You know, if I start preaching to all of them, like, hey, just, you know, start being more sociopathic and narcissistic, and girls will like you more. I mean, I'm literally making the world a worse place. And, you know, that's just assuming that it's a more effective mating strategy. I don't think it is in the modern day. It depends on who you want to attract, right? So if you want to attract low quality, insecure women, maybe that's the way to do it, but I don't give a shit about that. I don't care what trashy, like low quality women think about me. I really don't. I only care about what high quality women care about me. And when I say high quality, I don't just mean like physically attractive, although that's definitely part of it. I mean, physically attractive, kind, intelligent, in alignment with my values. And that's more sort of the light alpha strategy of being more sort of like a coalition builder, somebody who's a team player but isn't a pushover, right? Because there's a difference between being a good guy and a nice guy. A nice guy is basically the archetypal beta male, I guess, who's just like, he's almost like a rabbit, right? He needs to be nice to the wolves, or else the wolves are going to eat him. It doesn't make him virtuous, as opposed to if you can fight with the wolves, if you can contend with them, but you choose to be, kind to everybody regardless, right? That's more honorable because you're coming from a place of competence. And so that's what I try to teach or talk about on my channel, is more so kind of following that path. And I think the reason that it's a little bit less popular than like the dark triad path, for example, is because the dark triad, the dark alpha path, is more expedient. It's a lot easier for you to accomplish things when you only care about yourself, right? You don't have to take other people into consideration. You just do whatever you want. But if you take other people into consideration, it's a more difficult path. But I think it's a more fulfilling path. And then, all these things that we're talking about begs the question. It's like, well, what's the point of all of this? What's the point of you wanting to attract more women? What's the point of you wanting to be an alpha? It's so that you would live a happier, more fulfilling life, right?
No.
So, if you think that being manipulative or whatever to get women to like you, that's going to make you more fulfilled and happy, I don't know. I reckon to say it probably won't. So I always promote more that light alpha path. But yeah.
And anytime you look in history, you've always seen people who are, let's say, rule with the iron fist. It always comes back to bite them in the ass or stab them in the back, literally, or, there's always an uprising. So
yeah,
it's never, it's not, like you said, it's not an effective strategy.
And even with your significant other, eventually your woman's going to get annoyed, or she might cheat on you. She might, just because of how not, for me, I would say like cool, right? Not being a cool partner, more so just and nicer times being a douche, like that's like that's definitely not gonna help in the long run. But I guess my question on that note is like, why has that been more of a trend? Why has that been a battle of a light versus dark alpha? Like, why is that even a problem in today's society?
Do you mean like particularly in the dating context?
Yeah,
or
in
dating, like society as a whole?
No, I meant like in dating. Yeah, in dating.
I mean, there's a few different things going on there. I think first, most guys by definition are going to be more kind of like the nice guys, right? So where it all kind of started is, the birth control pill that kind of made the dating marketplace a bit more decentralized, I guess, if you want to put it in those terms. And then after that, so you had that, and then you had the dating apps, which kind of like accelerated that process, where naturally there's going to be all of these women have access to guys in which they really didn't have access to before. Right. Where like these high quality dudes or whatever. But these guys, they'll be willing to hook up with any girls, but doesn't necessarily mean that they like the girls the same way the girls like them, right? So inevitably there ended up becoming this sort of disparity that's even widening to this day of, a few minority of guys getting a bigger chunk of the women. And these top guys, I'm not necessarily saying that they're all like, dark alpha for if we want to categorize them. But I think especially nowadays with the birth control pill and dating apps, like I said, accelerating it, it's more likely that, sorry guys, I'm like blanking out here. I've been working all day today.
Take your time,
we appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, I just like started to feel dizzy. Shit. This has actually never happened to me on a podcast before. It's a good thing that we're pre-recording this, but you could keep this in if you want. I don't care. Yeah, because I went on like a coaching call like right before this, but
oh damn.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So where was I? Dark alpha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's a big disparity with the top 20% now, and I think because of that, because let's say like pre-birth control pill, and especially if we go even further back when Christianity, there was like a Christian norm, right, of monogamy. There were less people like complaining about their dating lives. I'm going out on a limb here and saying that. I'm sure there's still people struggling with it, but it was a bit different. And now, because there's so many guys who are sexless, who are really just don't have relationships, and especially with COVID now and everybody, like a lot more people working remotely from home, it's a lot tougher. And so because of that, even the top guys, a lot of the guys who in other times in society would have been the top guys, a lot of them are a little bit more now desperate as well. Mm-hmm. And so when you back guys into a corner, human beings, we're animals, you're going to start acting in irrational ways, and you're probably going to start compromising your values, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because it's a natural thing for humans to want to reproduce, to want to have relationships, men having relationships with women. And, when you feel sort of robbed of that, you're going to start implementing certain things in order to still get it, right? Mm-hmm. So, that kind of begs the question then, like, is it tougher nowadays to authentically attract a woman into your life through, ethical means? And that's actually something that I'm not sitting here trying to act like I know the answer to, right? I'd reckon to say it's actually probably tougher to do that just because of the reality that there's, a fewer amount of guys dating women than ever, but again, this is why it always kind of comes back to philosophy, like I said at the beginning, because, let's say, for example, that because it's tougher to date women authentically nowadays, does that excuse you, or does that automatically mean, oh, me being more manipulative, therefore that's okay? Mm-hmm. I don't really necessarily know if that's the case, man, because again, even if you're just looking at it from a purely selfish standpoint, I still feel like that's just not going to make you very happy. Mm. You're going to feel like a piece of shit. You might get laid, but like, you're not going to feel fulfilled. You know what I mean? There's a differentiation between, I was talking about this actually on the call earlier than right before this, which is why I was kind of tired. We were talking about a difference between hedonism and eudaimonia. So eudaimonia is kind of the idea that the Greeks came up with of like this feeling of fulfillment, this constant joy that you have because you're doing something meaningful and purposeful, right? As opposed to hedonism, which is just pure carnal pleasure. You just feel good in the moment. So if you're pursuing hedonism by trying to hook up with a bunch of different girls and, you're able to succeed in doing that, that doesn't, just because you have that doesn't necessarily mean that you're achieving eudaimonia, which is the thing that most people want. Most people want purpose. They want meaning in their lives, right? They want that constant feeling of joy that they're doing something meaningful. And, if you just start turning to the dark side to seduce women with the intent of thinking that that's going to make you happy, and then you realize that it doesn't, I mean, that makes them more miserable. And then it's, you guys know the maxim, the ends justify the means, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you take that perspective, the issue is, the means, interestingly enough, become the ends, right? Mm-hmm. Like you start to employ these dark triad tactics to try to, have some kind of good life at the end. But then by the time you get there, you just become an evil piece of shit. So it's like, and then you're actually miserable. You're miserable. And let's say you do get there, but you've changed so much as a person that you can't even enjoy the place that you're in. right? So it does come down to philosophy at the end of the day. But again, even so, even if it's just purely from like what's most effective in terms of dating, it really comes down to your values of, do you want to attract high quality women or low quality women? Because I think part of the issue with the manosphere, this space, is that we put women into this. Oh, whoops! I think my mic disconnected.
We can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Let me try this again. Hold on. Like moved it for a second and it's went all shit. All right, are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think part of the issue with the manosphere is that we put all women and female nature into just like this one bubble, right? As if like all women are always going to act this way, or this is just how women are. And, you know, I'm not denying that there's probably some fundamental female nature that a lot of basically all women are, it's kind of in their DNA, right?
Yeah.
But the same way that there's probably a male nature that drives all of us, it's reflected differently in the way we live our lives, right? Because if we can differentiate and say, hey, there's such thing as a high quality man and a low quality man, then I don't think it's such a weird thing to say. There's probably such thing as a low quality woman and a high quality woman. Right?
Yeah.
So if we assume that to be true, then there's probably going to be different strategies involved with attracting low quality women versus attracting high quality women. And I have no doubt that dark triad strategies are great for attracting low quality women, because low quality women are probably going to be insecure. Insecure people are gravitate toward other insecure people. Dark triad personality traits. So like, let's take narcissism, especially, for example, that's fueled by insecurity, right? Because narcissists need to get external validation from people to make them feel powerful. That's by definition insecurity, right? So if you want to attract insecure, low quality women into your life, maybe the dark triad, dark alpha strategy is the way to go. But I don't want that shit, right? I want high quality, cool women that won't be annoying as fuck, right? And constantly insecure and needing to like hold on to me. Like some guys like that. Those narcissistic, insecure guys actually want women who are like fully dependent on them and like constantly simping for them because it makes them feel powerful. Dude, I'm a very independent guy. I want a woman to help bring value to my life. But if she's like constantly just like doesn't leave me alone, like I'm just like, yo, no, bitch, get a life. Like, what the like, I love you, but like stop. No,
like nagging or whatever, you know. Yeah.
It's like, dude, I think strong men want to have strong women in their lives. Strong men don't want to deal with weak women, right? Weak men want to have weak women, right? There might be this facade of strength. That's the whole thing of like the dark triad thing. It's not actual strength. It's a facade of strength.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what it comes down to. It comes down to values. Do you, just to bring this all back to dark alpha versus light alpha, right? With dark alpha, dark alpha is great for attracting low quality women. Light alpha strategies good for attracting high quality women. Simple as that.
I have a question. This has to do with probably one of your biggest critiques of like Rollo Tomasi, Fresh and Fit. So they talk a lot about the only way to attract a lot of women is having a certain amount of income and stuff like that. And I guess I understand where their point comes from. I guess it's like more women are graduating, going to college. Men are having a hard time because all the manufacturing is overseas. A lot of men are not going to college. They're dropping out. However, there's always this like question, like if women are making more money and men's used to have their value used to be the breadwinner, what other values can a man bring besides money, in your opinion?
Well, again, I mean, this kind of goes back to, well, we almost have to take a step back. It's like, okay, well, why does money bring value?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Money brings value because it helps you live a certain type of life. Well, why do you want to live a certain type of life? Again, to be happy and fulfilled, right? So it depends on what value you bring, because like there's also have you guys heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs before?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, as long as you have your physiological needs met, then the other sort of values of being happy and whatnot, those come to become more relevant. So I'm sure you guys probably heard of this study, something along the lines of like human happiness is strongly correlated with income up to like $80,000 a year or something like that.
75,000, I think, is the mark or something.
75,000. Yeah. So I mean, you know, for a lot of people, that's a decent amount of money, but it's not like an unrealistic amount of money. You know, you work hard enough at any profession, you'll probably achieve that. And so I think there's a point to say, okay, well, the man needs to be earning a certain amount, but the issue with Fresh and Fit and Roll Tomas is they talk as if you need to be like a freaking millionaire. I think that's just a giant cope, honestly. Because look, you need to be a millionaire if you're an unattractive, weird dude that women don't like, right? That's the only way that you can bring value is with money if you have nothing else to offer, you know? And I think one thing that a lot of guys screw up within the manosphere, not just the manosphere specifically, but men in general, is they tend to project onto women their own rational and logical male minds, right? Where they think like, oh, well, I judge a man when I'm judging a guy based on whether he's like high quality, high value or not. It's like, well, let me look at his income statement. What are the numbers? What are his credentials? Where are the receipts, bro? Right. But when it comes to women and judging men, it's more like, what are the feelings that they give me? Of course, they still use their logic as well, but it's more so women will kind of judge men based on how they make them feel and then justify that with logic, right? Men, it's almost the opposite, where they'll go based off of like logic and then justify. I wouldn't necessarily say they justify with emotions. Just men tend to defer to logic a lot more, right? So that said, it's like the thing with the manosphere guys is there's half truths to almost everything that they say, which is what makes it so frustrating. It makes it so frustrating that it makes it it makes me understand why people follow them, right? And why their message can sometimes be so alluring, because it's not like every single thing that they're saying is complete bogus. Because if it was, nobody would follow them. Right? It's more so they observe certain things, and then their prescriptions on what to do based on those realities tend to be flawed, you know, or they're going based on their own personal perspective, right? So if you're like one of the Fresh and Fit guys where you're, you know, without your money or whatever, you're pretty much more an archetypal beta male, if we had to say it, right? A beta male strategy, if we had to put in those terms, would be to gain a lot of money or to have a lot of money so that you bring value to the woman, as opposed to somebody who's like the stereotypical, you know, high school quarterback, Chad, whatever, athletic, tall, ripped, whatever the hell you want to call it. Charismatic, all those types of things. You know, he's already bringing value by bringing good energy to women, which gravitate them toward him. But even with that, right, women will still, if that dude is completely broke, has no money and has no potential for money, right? Because women, you know, they use their brains too. I know the manosphere won't well, that's kind of a controversial thing to say in the manosphere, but they will think like, oh, well, where's my future going with this guy if he's just sitting around all day? Yeah, maybe he's handsome, maybe he's cool, maybe he's funny, but you know, if I want to start a family, when we can't do that if we're going to be perpetually broke. So if this guy isn't even trying, then she's not going to try either. And so even with, you know, the stereotypical Giga Chad, he still needs to have some level of stability, I think, for a high quality woman to be with him, you know, even though it's going to be easier. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to money, I think it's more of a threshold than anything. It's not like whoever has the most money and clout is going to get the most girls. It's like, you know, once you reach a certain point, then that maybe puts you at another level. But yeah.
Do you think it's more of an ambition thing? Because like you can be like a middle school teacher making like $50,000 a year, but be fulfilled, have your weekends off, take, you know, you're still striving to be better, but you're never going to be making like 80,000 or whatever.
Yeah. And again, you know, human beings, men included, but especially women, we're more emotional creatures than we are logical. I mean, this is very well documented within the psychological literature. So again, for us, it's tough for us male minds, because I do it too, you guys do it, all of us guys do it.
Yeah.
We try to be like, well, what's the objective thing that makes a man attractive to a woman? And then if you give an answer such as, oh, it's the guy that makes her feel the best, you know, that's a lot of the times us guys are like, that's not a good enough answer. You know? But here's the thing. If women tell each other that, right, they'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like,
good point.
Like if you see, I don't know if you guys have seen this in your own life or with relationships of friends of yours, but like sometimes women will just make decisions that otherwise seem very irrational, right? It's especially in terms of relationships. It'd be like they might leave some successful guy for some schlub, and then her justification is like, oh, I wasn't in love with him, but I'm in love with this guy. And the guys will be like, what the fuck? And then the girls will like completely understand, you know? I know we always want to make it, I know we always want to make it back down to like some logical explanation. And maybe deep down there is some evolutionary psychological explanation for it. But that's something that we got to keep in mind is when we're dealing with women, especially who are way more in tune with their emotions and act way more with their emotions. It's tough to just simply say, hey, when you hit these objective measures, all the bitches are going to be on your dick. Like, maybe, but also, again, that also begs the question. It's like, okay, well, if you are leading with your wallet, right? Because the implication of saying, I'm going to make a lot of money and that's how I bring value. I'm going to have a lot of clout and that's how I'm going to bring value. Sure, you'll bring value to the types of hoes that just, want your money and want to leech off of you.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, it's like, okay, is that even worth it? Because let's just take it from a purely sexual, carnal standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You think a girl like that is really like gonna try to like have good sex with you? Probably not. She's probably gonna do the minimal amount of work for you to still be able to pay for her shit and be able to repost her shit on Instagram. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So she might delay it, or she might make excuses or whatever, right? Those are different tactics.
So again, at the end of the day, it comes down to values. It's like, do you want a high quality woman? Do you want a low quality woman? I think what's important for most guys to do, because I understand in this space, it's so difficult for guys to be like, try to figure out how to be attractive to women as a whole. I think a better thing to do is most guys need to just write down what an ideal day in their life looks like, right? If everything was perfect, like what does your perfect life look like on a perfect ideal day? And chances are there's going to be some woman involved in that, right? So once you identify what that woman is, maybe just write down what that entails. What is she like? What does she look like? What does she look similar to? Right? And all those types of things. And then after that, you can start to take a few steps backwards and be like, well, what is the type of man that this type of high quality woman is going to be attracted to? Right? And then from there, you can start to kind of think, oh, do I match up with this guy? No, not at all. So here's what I need to work on, this, and that. Right? And again, that's just assuming that your number one motivation is just to attract a certain type of woman. I'm not necessarily saying that you should build your entire life around this ideal woman, this platonic form of woman. I'm not saying that, but like, it's something that you should take into consideration. I think it's a good thought experiment to really try to look at your values, to say like, all right, what's the perfect day? What does the perfect day look like? And then work backwards from there. Because I understand with the whole self-development stuff and dating, it's so confusing. There's so many different moving parts.
Yeah.
Right. But at the end of the day, what really matters personally for you is how does it relate back to your own personal life? Right. So, yeah. I don't even know what we were talking about there. I just want to
we got into a good
yeah.
I guess just to stay on that, like, because it does bring self-awareness by what you suggested. I think that's a really good idea, just to write down their ideal woman and realize what they're missing. What do you think is one step that somebody can use if they've always been so insecure their whole life, like, or maybe they have so many, they're insecure, they have so much anger, basically just a dark alpha, right? Just to put it simply. What are some steps they can do to start changing that? Maybe they're on the fence, maybe they want to start shifting, maybe they got to a point where they didn't get satisfaction after getting these low quality women, and now they want to strive for greatness, right? With the higher quality women. What's some steps they can start off, just small ones that they can change to adjust their life?
Yeah. I'd say the biggest one is, so actually I'm gonna come out with like a test or something soon, but basically you want to, it'll be like a free thing on my website, which I still have to create, but it's we'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there eventually. But basically, Aristotle, who had a profound impact on me and is basically the basis around almost all the things I talk about on my channel. He has this idea of, there's these two different vices. There's a deficient vice, there's an excessive vice, and then you want to try to find the golden mean between them, right? So one deficient vice, for example, is cowardice, right? Because cowardice is it's a deficient vice because it prevents you from taking any sort of action. An excessive vice, on the other hand, is recklessness, right? Where you're not a coward at all, but you're doing too much and you're not thinking, right? And so the golden mean between the two is courage. And courage, it's great because you're taking action, but you're also aware of your surroundings. You still have some fear, but you still take action regardless of that. And that's what makes it honorable. And so I think, Aristotle has these like 11 virtues. I think people can probably just Google it, just type in, the golden mean or Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. You don't necessarily have to read his the entire text, but I think it's good to look at all the virtues, deficient and excessive, and the golden mean between the two, and then try to be honest with yourself on like where in this chart are you, right? Are you more congruent with cowardice, or are you more congruent with recklessness? And if that's the case, then what Aristotle says is let's just take this example again. The cowardly man looks at the courageous man and says he's reckless. The reckless man looks at the courageous man and says that he's a coward, right? Wow. So our perspective on what those things are different. So you almost have to overcorrect. So if you identify with being a coward, for example, right? Whatever you think is reckless is probably more courageous than anything, right? It's not actually probably truly reckless. So you want to try to be more like that. Now, am I saying that you want to be reckless? No. This is where the translations kind of get tricky, because you can also just call overconfidence, right? It's also translated as overconfidence from the ancient Greek. So let's just use that, because that makes more sense with this kind of comparison. So you'd almost want to be a little bit more overconfident than what you would consider as confident, and then you'll hit right where you need to be. But more than anything, like if we take a step back even before that, I think a man's success in his life is almost going to be directly related to his relationship with fear and how he deals with fear, right? Not just men, but women as well. And so if you can start to do these sort of little acts of courage where you're overcoming fear every day, even just little things, right? Then that can build up to something tremendous over time, because then you can actually start to live your life without limitation and actually truly be free, right? And so what are some practical ways of doing that? Well, this is one thing that I do at restaurants a lot. I actually learned this from some guy that like used to work with my dad. But basically, because he was a sales guy, right? And so in order for him to get used to asking for things, whenever the server would come around to the table and give him the check, if he was at a restaurant, he would always ask, "Hey, can I have a discount?" That's it. No reason. She'd be like, "Oh, do you know somebody here?" I'd be like, "No, I just want to see if I can have one." Right? It's just awkward enough where you feel like it's kind of scary, but then also it's not a big deal, because what's the worst that's going to happen? They say no. What's the best that's going to happen? They say yes. So that's one little thing that you can definitely do. I would also say, again, it's like, where can you implement these little acts of courage where there's literally almost zero negative repercussions, right? Luckily, we live in the 21st century cushy world cushy first world that we live in, where we really don't need to be that afraid of being in any like immediate danger, right? So another thing that you can do is when you're at a grocery store, you're just at any store in general, you can start to chat up the employees there, right? Especially if you don't know, if you're not good with socializing, because they need to be nice to you. They don't need to be nice to you, but they need to talk back, right?
Yeah.
They need to talk back to you. So you can almost use them as like these people who are like basically volunteering to help you be better with your social skills, you know? And if anything, especially these people, like, you know, if they're working, you know, at a retail store or something, they're trained to put the customer first, and they're probably bored out of their mind. So you're actually probably making their day by talking to them, right? It's not like you're really disturbing them. But, you know, one thing that Aristotle talked about a lot is habituation, right? You basically, by courageous man is courageous because he does courageous things, right? That sounds very obvious, of course, but in a way it's sort of profound, because it's like, okay, well, if you want to become this certain type of person, you need to act like that person, right? A witty person. So wittiness, for example, is another one of his virtues. If you want to be a witty person, you need to be witty. Well, how do you become witty? You keep trying to do witty things, and then you take the feedback from other people to see whether that actually was witty or not. And if it wasn't, then you correct. If it was, you keep doing that same thing, right?
Yeah.
So whatever ways in which in your daily life in which you can practice these things habitually, eventually that's going to lead to the thing that you actually want, you know? And I think Aristotle's excessive vices, deficient vices, and the golden mean between them, that's a good roadmap for you to be like, okay, well, this is what a high quality person is. Here's where I am currently. Here's where I want to go. Right. And I think that's a good first starting place.
That's cool.
Yeah. I hope that makes sense. I mean, that's kind of what I want to try to, you know, make a lot more videos on and my content on, because, you know, I've studied philosophy a decent amount, not as much as maybe, you know, somebody who majors it in the university, but I've pretty much come to the conclusion that there's like Nietzsche and Aristotle, and then there's like everybody else, you know, at least for me, because they focus so much on the individual and values, more specifically. So, and I think that's everything. And especially, I think that's much needed for men nowadays to learn to become strong and be encouraged to become stronger and better, and use themselves as their sort of, as the starting point for their happiness, not try to seek happiness externally, but seek it internally by making yourself the best you can be.
It kind of reminds me of like the code of the samurai, where you lead with honor and you always do things with honor and try to live an honorable life, and you know, show respect and that kind of stuff. Kind of reminds me of
that comes naturally to me because I'm half Japanese. I don't know if you guys knew that.
Oh no!
I heard from other podcasts. I know what he gets, but yeah, I heard you from other podcasts.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm like the whitest looking Asian of all time. Like, if there was some award for
you got the best beard.
Win it. Yeah. I think my beard beats a lot of white guys' beards, but I guess whatever beard genetics, it probably just came exclusively from my Caucasian side, but yeah. I thought I should mention that. I thought it was funny.
No, that's cool. I guess on that, like how you mentioned you have like, I think you said almost 17 or almost 20,000 subscribers, like the ideologies that you're presenting and that you're sharing with everybody or your audience. It's cool because some of them might not have, I mean, I don't want to put that pressure on you, but maybe they might not have a father figure, right? They weren't taught the right way. They were brought up by, you know, their mother, who has different values, as opposed to, I guess we would quote unquote say a man should, you know, live his life by, you know, by virtues like you mentioned. So I think just, I guess, more of an honorable shout out like that. That's pretty cool of you to take that position.
Thanks, man.
For you to help out him.
Yeah, really quickly, I actually look at myself a bit more as like an older brother than as a father.
Damn, sick.
Because, you know, first of all, I'm still in my 20s, I'm 28. But then also, I think, you know, a lot of times if you take on the role of a father figure, I mean, you, in a way, like your dad, your father, basically tells you all about the world and completely shapes your worldview, right?
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily claiming to do that. I'm more so like the older brother that really cares about you. But like, if you start bitching and complaining, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. Alive. You know what I mean? And a lot of times when guys, you know, you see it in my comment sections, there's a lot of guys who are really negative. It's so funny because they come to every single one of my videos, right? Every single one. So it's like some part of me, and they watch the whole video all the way through, right? So if they really hated me or thought I fucking sucked, they wouldn't do that. So there's some part of them that understands that that I'm speaking some sort of truth. I'm speaking something to them, but I'm basically like the older brother that doesn't let them give any excuses. And I look at them as almost like the little brother that is just like complaining to their mom that the older brother's being mean. Because I'm just relentless with it. But at the end of the day, that random commenter, even though, and granted, I probably should be, sometimes they piss me off enough where I, you know, maybe I'm a little bit too mean with my words back to them, but you know, it is coming from a place of like, I do want them to become better. But there also are some guys, I will say, that are borderline hopeless. And it's almost like them commenting a bunch of negative shit might end up poisoning the minds of other guys who are right on the brink. Right. So that's why sometimes, you know, when people say, oh, you're not changing the minds of the black pillars or the nihilistic guys, I'm like, I'm not trying to do that, because chances are they're too far gone. I'm trying to help the guys who are right on the brink that might get tempted by those guys to join their little cult of inceldom and nihilism, you know? And of course, those guys, like, I want them to live better lives. That I hope that my videos can help inspire them and make them feel a little bit better. But I'm, you know, you there's only so much that you can do.
Misery
right?
loves
If somebody
company,
keeps
right?
denying your help and denying your help, and keeps calling you names and whatever, even if they, you know, even if you want them to change, if they don't want to change, then you can't do anything. You know, I would like to think, like I said earlier, that some of them somehow are just getting a little bit more positive, actually giving themselves a little bit more personal responsibility, but most aren't. You know, it's a sad reality, but you know, this is something that Nietzsche kind of prophesized, and one of the reasons I think he's a genius is he came up with this idea of the last man. In German, it's called like the letzter Mensch or something like that. But I like to call people that from now on, because it's instead of calling them, oh, you're a last man, it's like, no, you're a letzter Mensch, you dummy. But being a letzter Mensch and ruining the world. But basically, the letzter Mensch, the last man, was the archetypal passive nihilist. Basically, somebody who's like bored with life, kind of done with anything, like doesn't really try hard, doesn't go out, doesn't do whatever, right? Just kind of thinks everything's kind of pointless. Like, what's the point, right? That's the black pill. That's literally the black pill personified. So Nietzsche prophesized the black pill with the way that he called, you know, the last men, right? The lesser Mensches. And so, you know, that's basically that's congruent with the fall of society. As that grows, the more that grows, the faster that grows, the faster society will crumble.
Wow.
So the things that we're talking about here, it's not as simple as just like, oh, how do I get laid? Like, what's the thing that I say to the girl, right? There's very rarely you'll find videos, especially recently, of mine being like, how to text the girl if she says this. I still think there's great value in that. Don't get me wrong. It's just, you're not going to find that type of stuff on my channel too much. Because I think the reason I'm so passionate about this is, and I'm passionate specifically about fighting the black pill, is because the black pill is directly related with the fall of society as a whole. The things that we hold dear, right? The values of the West, America, religion, whatever you want to call it, right? The more that we have all these last men, these nihilists, the faster the things that we love are going to just completely get destroyed. And some people still think some people think it's too far gone. that it can't be helped. The optimist in me doesn't want to believe that, and we should still fight to, you know,
Yep.
just make sure guys don't become like this, right? But then also look at things objectively as well, because you don't want to have false hope or almost say like, oh, it's not your fault for this happening. No, in a way, society has failed you. Society has failed these men, and they became like this because the people that were in charge of society were weak men themselves. It's the blind leading the blind, right? So weak men raise more weak men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so these weak men, they still have value. A lot of them can become strong men, but a lot are too far gone, you know, and I feel a lot of sympathy for them, whatever. Maybe they didn't have a strong father. Maybe they didn't have a strong brother. But at least for me, the role that I try to play is to be the strong brother, to not let these people become nihilists. That's really what my channel is all about. Is it's fighting nihilism, because it's becoming so pervasive among our generation. It's only going to get worse, and a lot of it is reflected in these guys' dating lives. Right, a lot of times these guys' dating lives is what pushes them over the edge. Unfortunately,
I would say it's both. There's two things, right? There's not having a purpose and not finding someone who has the same values. I see a lot of guys, for example, like I was talking about earlier, a lot of the manufacturing and all that stuff went overseas. And, you know, if you used to be able to manufacture stuff and be proud of those, like American made, a lot of guys would deliver a lot of value for that. You know, they had a good income and stuff like that. And now that a lot of the manual blue collar jobs are getting shipped out, it's hard for a lot of those guys that didn't go to college to find purpose when they're struggling, living paycheck to paycheck. So I think there's part of it is like not knowing what your purpose is, and then your part is not attracting the type of woman that you want to attract, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important again, because this is why I still have sympathy for these black pill guys and guys who have become nihilistic, because things are tough. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the things that made the world tough isn't your fault. It's other people that caused that to happen. Right. Yeah. But this cycle of negativity is only going to keep going if we keep putting in positions of power these people that cause these bad things to happen in the first place.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's going to keep happening if we have a society, or we have a culture of weakness, and we accept weakness and nihilism. Right. So, like, look, like I said, I understand, like, if you're dealt a shitty hand, I totally get it. I have a bunch of sympathy for you. But at the same time, I'm not going to allow you to use that as an excuse to become all negative and start to spread your negativity like a cancer and a poison to everybody else around you. You know, at that point, I'm going to step in and be like, no, fuck you, dude. Here's why you're wrong. Right. You can bitch and complain all you want. I don't care, because, you know, the thing that I'm trying to do, the thing that hopefully the other big guys in the self-development space are trying to do, is to try to inspire hope and to try to take action and try to take life back into your hands and stop being a fucking victim.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what it's all about, man. So that, you know, it's pretty cool. I am quite hopeful. I'm happy that my channel is growing, but I'm also happy to see some other channels that are growing way faster and have way more influence, like Hamza. I'm sure you guys know who that is, right? Maybe not. No.
Well, anyway, I've seen the name, but I've never checked out the videos.
Yeah, he's like a self-development YouTuber. He's a little bit more. Well, he talks about the red pill, but he's a little bit more. He's a younger guy, and I don't think a lot of his ideas are like fully formed yet. I mean, you know, to his credit, who is like, my ideas aren't fully formed yet either. And the guy I talked about, Nietzsche, his ideas were never fully formed either. But, you know, he's helping to influence a lot of young men to, you know, not be negative and, you know, just shut the fuck up and do the work and, you know, actually try to become better, make self-development, self-improvement a passion. And I think that's awesome. You know, I mean, obviously I would like to have one day just as much influence as him. But even though I don't, it does give me hope that you know, it's not just a bunch of that there's almost like a counterculture to the weakness that has been pervasive and almost kind of accepted within men nowadays.
I give you a lot of respect for you also combating or trying to combat bad ideas with good ideas. And when Joe Rogan talks about it, you talk about it as well. And what I mean by that is like trying to combat people who do promote negativity and who do promote, you know, OnlyFans content and trying to make pretty much just have this culture of men just pretty much simping for them. That way they can just profit off their misery, and then they just have this cycle of misery. So I do give you a lot of respect for trying to, you know, talk to like Rollo Tomasi and trying to talk to like Fresh and Fit and stuff like that, because we need somebody out there who will fight the good fight. And if you don't have anybody, then these confidence artists, which is what they are, they're confidence artists that have this dark triad, are just going to continue to take lives in a sense.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you say that. And because a big argument that these guys say they're fans, funny enough, it's the same exact argument that the feminists and the leftists that they criticize say as well, is, you know, it all comes down to moral relativism. So moral relativism is basically the idea that everybody's moral code is equal. Even though it's different, it's just as valid, which is a load of shit, right? No, there are some moral systems. There are some things that are good and some things that are bad. Just because, you know, you think that, for example, I don't know, like, okay, not to get too political, but just because you think that teaching LGBTQ things to 3-year-olds is good, you know, doesn't mean that like I need to just sit here and accept that because like, oh, that's your truth and this is my truth. It's like, well, yes, but also my truth is correct in this case and yours is wrong. And I'm willing to have a discussion with you, but I'm not just going to accept that and let that happen. So the equivalent of the manosphere is when Rollo Tomasi makes these broad generalizations about women and female nature, basically saying all women are hypergamous and solipsistic. Meanwhile, men are all rational, right? Which, if you just look at the scientific literature, is not true. It's pure conjecture. It's not a coincidence that literally 0 people within the evolutionary psychologist space want anything to do with Rollo Tomasi. They're just like, that guy he's not one of us. Screw that guy. Basically, a lot of them actually have publicly denounced him, right? Yeah. But then this is why bad ideas, or not just bad ideas, these are poisonous ideas, right? Because they poison the mind, they poison the perspective of which you view other people, right? If you really take to heart what Rollo Tomasi says about women, you're going to start looking at half of people as different. And again, with him, it's dangerous because there's half truths here and there. This is really tricky of Rollo, what he did, right? The things that he says about women, for the most part, are true. The issue is he doesn't say, he paints it as if men are different, right?
Yeah.
In the sense that a lot of the things that he claims women are guilty of, men are guilty of as well, because there's a lot of these things doesn't just come down to sexual differences. It comes down to, at the root of it, the human condition as a whole, which both men and women are a part of, right? But just for fancy marketing reasons, he attributes all of these bad, quote unquote, bad things about human psychology to women specifically, so that he can paint men as the hero, so that he can gain a following to fuel his God complex, right?
Yeah.
But again, with him, it's just like most people just won't call him out on that because they don't realize the extent of the damage that he's doing to the culture.
Yeah.
Because let's just say, for example, that he's strongly influenced. I don't know, because he's been around for like 15 years now, 15, 20 years, I think. Let's just say that he's strongly influenced. Okay, here's a perfect example. He strongly influenced one person. Who is that one person? Myron Gaines, right? Myron Gaines ends up getting a following of over 500,000 impressionable young men. Those 500,000 impressionable young men start taking this ideology of Rollo Tomassi and implementing it into their dating lives, right? So automatically, let's say each of these young men interact with at least one woman each, which a lot of these guys are closeted incels. So that's probably actually saying a lot. It's probably less than that. but regardless, let's just say that it is, right? Automatically now you have 1 million people who are heavily influenced by this bad idea, by this bad ideology from this total trash that is the Rational Male book, right? So you have 1 million people that are affected by that now. And let's say of those 500,000 women, half of them have children, right? So there's 250,000 people. Eventually down the line, it ends up being millions of people that are affected just by this one bad idea from this one piece of shit book, So to combat these ideas, that stuff matters, right? It's not as simple as just like, oh, my truth and your truth. It's like, no, your truth sucks and your truth is actually untruth. It's not true. And I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt that maybe it's a misunderstanding. Let's talk about it, right? Let's compare ideas. And this is something that Rollo Tomassi says himself, that's a value of his. He says, oh, the red pill is not written in pen, it's written in pencil. At the end of his Rational Male book, he says, I'm not scared of people who question me. I'm afraid of people who don't question me. I was like, great. Let's have a discussion about this, Rollo. And then he comes out in an entire podcast hit piece of me saying that I'm driving guys to suicide by telling them that his book really isn't worth reading.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, that's crazy, man. He literally accused me of killing guys.
I saw that and I was just shaking my head. I'm like, wow.
I know.
That's crazy.
I know, man.
Character assassination to the fullest. Damn.
But that also goes to show you what his actual motivations are, right? Yeah. He's not there to seek the truth. He's only there to fuel his own personal truth. And his own personal truth is poisoning the minds now of potentially millions of men indirectly, right? We can't just go off of book sales because, like I said, everything that Fresh and Fit does is a kind of, especially Myron, right? Myron's basically the guy running the show. He's heavily influenced by Rollo Tomassi, right? That whole entire red pill manosphere space. And that has influenced the black pillars as well. The black pillars hate the red pill guys, but all of their ideas are basically a tangent of what they found in the Rational Male. It's a shame, man.
Do you think that one of the reasons why Rollo Tomassi and Fresh and Fit, they're not willing to have debates is because they made a lot of money. So if they were to have a debate and they know that they're going to lose to somebody who's smarter than them, they're going to lose all the fans. Their fans are going to see that they're not really who they say they are. They're going to lose the money. They're going to lose the clout. I think about because their foundation is very faulty. So if you were to dig into their ideas, they're going to get destroyed, and all the money and accolades and their clout would be pretty much gone. So I think that's one of the reasons why they wouldn't want to debate, because they're going to lose their gains to lose ratio is so high.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're willing to debate people who aren't well educated in the subject, right? They do that all the time. And then they end up thinking that they're tough shit because they came out looking good from the debate. It's the equivalent of let's say freaking not LeBron. I can't compare these guys to LeBron. Let's say like a professional basketball player, right? Even if he's sits on the bench, all right? A professional basketball player, if he plays one-on-one versus like a high school player, he's going to destroy him every time, right?
Yeah.
So, oh, congratulations. But that same NBA basketball player, let's say he plays like an NBA All-Star, right? I'm not arrogant enough to call myself LeBron or whatever, but I would say, from in this manosphere space, especially, I would probably, if there was like an all-star team in terms of like thoughts, I would probably be on it. Right. So he's not willing to contend with somebody that is, again, I'm not going to go out and say like I'm intellectually superior to Rollo or Myron. I'd reckon to say we're probably about the same.
Equal,
except that with me, I have good ideas and evidence on my side, and for them, they don't. So on an equal playing field, let's say intellectually we're, same IQ, same debate skills or whatever, I have good ideas and they don't. and they can't use some rhetorical strategy against me to beat me, they're probably going to lose, right? Because the playing field's equal. And from this standpoint, I'd actually say, for example, that they're on the all-star team as well, right? Intellectually speaking, just in the manosphere space. I think in terms of like actual like academics and stuff, like, you know, you talk to certain PhDs, especially in certain fields, you talk to them and you realize how fucking stupid you actually are. But like, but in terms of the manosphere, in terms of this, I would say that we're, you know, we're probably more like the thought leaders, right? So yeah, they don't want to contend with people like that, because they saw what happened with the debate with you know, Donovan Sharp with me, and then also, you know, to his credit, Alex mopped the floor with Donovan way more than I did, to the point where, I don't know if you guys knew this, Myron Gaines called up Donovan and said, "Hey, don't talk to Alex anymore." And then Donovan was like, "Okay."
Oh shit! I didn't know that. That's crazy.
These guys don't want to talk to people that disagree with them, that they think that can contend with them intellectually, and are part of the same space. If that's not concealing the truth, I don't know what is. That's literally you being one of the machines in the matrix. You're not seeking the truth at that point. You're just trying to do whatever you can to fuel your own grift and your ideology. You know, screw that. So sorry, kind of a rant.
No, go ahead.
This is all new to me.
That's why I love podcasts, man, because it's kind of like, you know, it's always good to have a little bit of a structure, but it just kind of like goes all over the place. I think that's part of what makes podcasts entertaining is, you know, you have these certain subjects that you talk about, but then like you don't know where the conversation is going to take you. You know? So
it's the best part of it.
Yeah.
I guess just to maybe change it a little bit, but still on it.
Go ahead.
Like if you had a stage where you can send one message out to, I would say more black pillars, just going off what you're saying, that they're a branch off the red pill, so they're more lost, if anything, right? What would be your message to them if they were all open ears and were like, "All right, Kevin, we're listening to you. This is the one time you can give us your message, and we'll decide here not to shift." What would be your message?
I would say read Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. Actually, wait, either that or read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink.
Yeah, that's a good book.
Yeah, I think the latter would probably be a little bit better, because it's somebody who's a little bit more modern. He uses a bit less technical terms, but you know, philosophy, the root word of it, it's philosophia, so it means love of wisdom. If you break it down, I think it's in Latin. Yeah, exactly. In Latin, philosophia, it means love of wisdom, right? And so, in a way, I think all of us are philosophers in a way. So I still have respect for people who study philosophy, but if we just go by the definition of love of wisdom, which is how I view philosophy, I much prefer Jocko Willink's perspective on things than some egghead philosopher at some university. Okay, because that guy has lived life experiences that give him a perspective on things that just make so much sense. So here's a perfect example. I remember someone like wrote into him and he said like, "Hey, I just feel like I feel good just playing like video games and stuff all day and like sitting in, and I just want to keep doing it. Like, how do I stop? Like, I don't really see what's wrong with it." And then Jocko's response was simply just this: "Is that what you should be doing?" That's it. It's like, should you be doing that? Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, it was, I thought it was so profound, because it was like, it was that simple, because he was basically just asking the question, like, do you think you should be doing this? And that's it. And the guy was, I mean, you never, because he just wrote into it, so you don't know his reaction, but I imagine the guy was just like, I mean, no, I know deep down that I shouldn't be doing this, so maybe I should stop. Right? It's just so simple, you know. He said in like a few words what some people write entire books about.
Yeah.
Right? He was just like, Is that what you should be doing?
Yeah.
Right, I thought of that. I guess not. I shouldn't be doing this.
Let
Like,
me
what does that
contemplate my
mean,
whole
right?
life. Hold on.
Yeah.
No, I know, but yeah,
Yeah.
it makes total
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
So it's like that practical wisdom is, I think, very much what people need, rather than more specifically like moral wisdom. Of course, that's important too, but practical wisdom. And you can find that in these great people within our society have accomplished great things, such as somebody like Jocko Willink, right? So Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink. If I had to say, Black pillars, go read that book, because for them, they're literally doing the opposite. They're taking on such a victim mindset. And if that book is great because it's literally you're gaining the wisdom of a Navy SEAL commander, of just telling you, just shut the fuck up. Yeah, he actually says it in a pretty nice way in the book. It's not like a drill sergeant. He's basically just kind of laying out how you should just take extreme ownership with everything. Even if you are a victim, even if you're objectively a victim in a certain case, you should still look at it as if, like, what could I have done? Right. And that's the mindset that these Black pillars need, because, you know, if you look for enough excuses to make yourself a victim, you'll find it. You will absolutely find it every time. There will be something that you can find to alleviate yourself from personal responsibility. And so Jocko Willink's sort of like hard-nosed stance of like, no, extreme ownership every time, no matter what. That's the message that these guys need.
What do you think? How do you think you can help? I guess it's hard for me. I'm having a hard time. Like if you're already like in a dark path, how can you reflect on creating hope in your life?
So the thing that like I talked about before, Aristotle with habituation, right? If you want to be happy, you need to make a habit of doing things that make you happy, you know. It's easier said than done, but you kind of have to look at your values. You have to look at your life and see, okay, well, why does my life suck? Because believe it or not, a lot of these guys, we like to almost imagine that these Black pill guys are like miserable all the time. And in a weird way, I think they find happiness in their mediocrity, in their weakness, right? Because that alleviates them from taking any risks. And then you start to just kind of accept your place in the world as a loser, right? That's actually their comfort zone. So, you know, but that comes at the expense of, again, that's like hedonic pleasure versus eudaimonia pleasure, of actually, or eudaimonia, where, you know, you have this feeling of purpose and fulfillment, like you're doing something, right? You're coming from a place of strength, you're accomplishing great things, and you feel joy because of it. That is a feeling that these guys lack, because as a prerequisite of that, you need to be a strong, capable person willing to face their fears. And I forgot your question, man. I went on a tangent there. Sorry. Can you say that again?
Yeah, no worries. I guess for me, it's hard for me when you're already have a psychological loop of like, you're kind of on this racetrack of like negativity, and you see your life, like you said, like meek, less than, kind of like a loser. How do you find light, I guess, when you're stuck in such a dark path?
So actually, I'll give a little bit more of a practical thing that these guys can do, because again, their biggest issue is they are not going out there and living their lives, and they're just being hermits at home and sitting around, and then they're stuck with their thoughts all day, right? So if human beings are way more motivated by pain avoidance than anything. So if you're stuck with your thoughts all day, eventually you're going to start thinking negative thoughts, and those negative thoughts are going to consume you. So these guys just need to get out of their house. But what's the good way to do it, of doing that? You need to have some discipline in your life, but you know, discipline's very, very difficult. If discipline was easy, then all of us would be super successful, right? So the main thing that they need to do is stop watching porn. Honestly, because that my channel used to be like a nofap channel, and I'm gonna cover more nofap content again soon, because you know, that's just enough to put you in a docile state, right? To just be content with just laying there and not doing anything, right? But if you're not allowed to like get off, right, you have all this pent up energy in you, you're going to have to release that energy somewhere else, right? So like, what are you going to release that energy in your house by like running around in circles? No, you're probably going to go outside, right? You're probably going to go outside. So I'm telling you, none of these black pill guys do no fab. None of them. They're all porn addicted. All of them.
Oh wow.
Because that's their only outlet. That's their only release from their tension, right? For them to live this lethargic life of squalor and be okay with it. The only reason they're okay with it is because they can come on demand by like just going on Pornhub really quickly, just taking out their phone. And then they don't even have a temptation to go outside anymore. They can just like kind of sit there and just, just veg out.
I'm done for the day.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's
so like I said, in a way, that's actually very much a hedonic lifestyle. They are living lives of hedonism. If you are a porn addicted person, you're watching porn constantly, you are living a very hedonistic lifestyle, very hedonistic. And when you're constantly living a hedonistic lifestyle, that's going to lead you to a whole bunch of other negative things. Right. And it's going to come at the expense of you, reaching, like I said, eudaimonia, fulfillment, because you can use that energy instead to actually try to go out there in the world and interact with the world and actually make a difference and not just live inside your own head.
Yeah.
So that number one thing black players need to do is stop jerking off all the time.
Hey, that's a good start.
Stop buying lotion, all right, guys?
Here's another thing too. Here's another reason. One of the other reasons that these black pill guys are definitely jerking off all the time. They say that of course, if you press them on it, nobody's going to be like, yeah, I'm addicted to porn. I jerk off. Right. Like, no, I don't even watch that much porn. It's like, here's another thing. Here's another thing that I know for a fact that they are, right. Look at their way of how they talk about women and their sense of entitlement, that they feel that they're entitled to a even mildly attractive woman, right? Because these guys complain, oh, I can't get anything. Like even the not so good looking girls, they all want Chad. It's like, okay, well, have you gone after any of these not so good looking girls? Like the ones, because like objectively, if we're talking about a sexual marketplace, right, or a dating marketplace, let's say there's 100 people here, 100 people here, right? They all get matched up with each other, right? The top percentile man and woman together, 98th percentile together, 97% together. That means that the people at the bottom, right, the bottom 10% men should shack up with the bottom 10% girls, right? Going out on a limb here, but most black pillars are probably bottom 10% men. All right. So just based on this logic, they should be shacking up with the bottom 10% girls, right? But they don't want to. Why? They won't settle for that. Why? Because they watch a lot of porn where they see the girls up here getting fucked constantly, and that's their only perception of a woman that they have, because they don't interact with the real world. They get a sense of entitlement unconsciously that it's not even worth it for them to go dating if they can only date these bottom 10% women, right? But technically, that's what you deserve, dude. This is the number one thing that guys need to ask themselves when they start to like be like talking about women, all this shit. It's like, well, why do you deserve a hot girl? Every guy wants that hot girl. Why do you deserve her? Right? What do you bring to the table? And then obviously all these guys are always just like silent after that because they know deep down that they bring nothing. So it's like, okay, well, if you bring nothing, then you should shack up with the girls that also bring nothing. Oh, you don't want that? Oh, so you're entitled then. Well, if you want the top girls, maybe you got to work on yourself.
Yeah.
But again, the reason that they don't do that is because the only interactions that they have with women are above average looking women that they watch through their phone screens while they jerk their dicks off to them getting fucked by the alpha male that they wish they were. Right.
And they get addicted to it, and then they can't. They're a cycle of addiction, right?
Yeah, and then that also becomes the kind of copium that they use to shield themselves from the pains of the world, right? So that they can sit at home and not feel motivated to do stuff. Because like I said before, if you have this sort of energy within you that we naturally have as human beings, as young men, right? To go out there into the world and do stuff. If you just constantly suppress that by watching porn, then you can just sit at home. But also the risk with you using that energy and going out there is facing things like rejection. You go out there into the world, you leave your little nest, you might get hurt. There's risk involved there.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really what it comes down to with these black pill guys is they're risk averse. They don't want to do it. And one of the reasons that is when we talk, because I say all the time, it's like, well, why don't you just like go ask a girl out? Why don't you cold approach? They're like, I won't have success with that. But then also like, oh, is that your advice? Just go cold approach, bro. Like, what if you get rejected? It's embarrassing. It's like not even worth it. It's like, oh, that's exactly it right there. The fact that the reason you don't want to go ask a girl out is because you can't handle the pain of rejection. All of us feel that pain of rejection, man. It fucking sucks.
Yeah.
But what differentiates the guys that live great lives and the guys that live miserable lives is, again, their relationship with fear and their relationship with rejection. Okay? Because the guys that live these Chad awesome lives, like they'll, even if they face rejection, they'll go do it. And the guys that live miserable lives never get over that fear.
Do you think that's because they don't even practice talking to regular people? Do you think that's like for them, that's like a tall order? For example, maybe they don't need to talk to a woman or like the most attractive, maybe not even like the like second most attractive. They need to talk to the Starbucks chubby, gross looking woman that's kind of, funny, but kind of quirky or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
That's a great point, man.
Start there before they even talk to the hottie, working at the bar.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. From a practical perspective, yes, that's exactly what they should do. Because if you just like step out of your house and just go ask out the first hot girl that you see, you're not going to be able to do it. Your amygdala is going to be firing up. Your fight or flight response is going to go crazy. You feel like you're going to die. Like every step that you take toward that hot girl, you feel like there's like an extra, 200 pounds of cement attached to your leg with each step that you take toward her. That's a natural response that's going to happen to things that you're completely unfamiliar with. So you can build your way up to that. Absolutely. And your way to build up to that is, like we talked about earlier, is just practice socializing in general.
Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of these black pill guys that say, oh, game doesn't exist. Game is just social skills. They're talking as if social skills is like something that's like easy, like the guy with the best social skills is going to be a multi-millionaire because of their ability to influence people around them. That's the most powerful skill you could ever learn. Social skills is the most powerful thing you could ever learn. And it's something that most people don't really have, or they're like very average or mediocre at, right? Having social awareness. So if game is just simply teaching social awareness and social skills, that's fine, because social awareness and social skills is one of the toughest, first of all, one of the most valuable things you're ever going to learn. And then also it's something nobody can ever perfect. It's actually an art form. It's very difficult. It's something that even me, I help guys with, but even me, I still look at myself as an apprentice right? Like there's very few people that are so charismatic and have such good social awareness and social skills that they can command the attention of millions of people and have influence, positive or negative, over millions and millions of people, right?
Yeah.
So modern people nowadays, guys like, Jordan Peterson, Joe Rogan, right? The art of being good at socializing and talking is to make it seem effortless. But in reality, what those guys are doing, it's not easy at all. It took them decades to get that good.
And Joe Rogan says it on his podcast multiple times. Like when he first started, he would say he was very awkward. He didn't know how to ask questions and stuff like that. But just by habits and continuation of just doing it and getting better at it, he just got better at it, listening and all that stuff too.
Yeah. I mean, social skills are, if game is simply social skills, if that's the claim that black pillars are making, then fine. Learn social skills then.
Yeah, because I think just kind of going off that, like, just me personally, like, I understand, like, if I'm out socially where I'm at and I know a guy is like obviously going up to a girl, like hollering at her basically, like I always like to watch it because I understand like what it took for him to get there. So for me, I'm like a fan, you know, like it's like, I mean, and I was kind of messed up to say, but it's kind of like a sport. Like I'm watching this guy just be awesome at what he does, and I get it. So like, I don't know. Awesome. I just, you know, like it took a lot to get there. Like it wasn't like this so simple thing. Like, so for me, it's like
good that it's yeah, it's good that it's brutal honesty, you know, because like I actually posted a video about this today. I don't know if you guys watched it yet, but basically it's talking about pickup artists and how, you know, although a lot of them are scammers, I respect a lot of them. And honestly, because it's so hard to shoot your shot, it's nerve-wracking. So any guy that can muster up the courage to go do that, regardless if he uses the cringy pickup line or if he's stuttering over his words or whatever, you know, that guy deserves some credit, man, because the guys who are criticizing him are most likely cowards. And because they're cowards, they're reminded of their own cowardice when they see that guy's bravery, and they don't know how to react, so they criticize him. Right? So if you're actually honest, right? What's that?
Because they're cowards, they see him as rash.
Yeah, pretty much. Right? Yeah. And sometimes they are rash. So like if you're really drunk and falling over, you're going, hey girl, hey, where are you from? What's your shine? Like, okay, yeah, that guy's an idiot, right? But if it's like a guy who's sober or really just hasn't had that much to drink, and you could tell like it took a lot of courage for him to go up and talk to her, and then you make fun of that guy, you're saying more about yourself than that guy. Yeah. That guy deserves props, and you criticizing him, you expose yourself as just being a coward, an envious coward, you know? And so I always appreciate, actually, because, you know, I always appreciate guys who can give credit to guys for shooting their shot. You know, it's something that we all would think is like self-evident, because I think deep down, all of us know that that's a pretty amazing thing that guy did and deserves credit. But so here's a good quote for you guys. One of my favorite quotes. It goes along the lines of, "Envy is secret admiration." Right. So I'm pretty sure it was Kierkegaard that came up with that. But basically, you know, people who envy you in that situation where the coward looks at the guy who shot a shot and be like, oh, that was pathetic. Like, oh, like, look at that guy. You know, he envies him because he wishes he had the courage to go do what he does, what he did. So he secretly admires him, but he sees what he did and he's reminded of, it's like a dark mirror back to him of his own cowardice. And it's such a brutal reality of like saying, oh, wow, I'm a coward. It's like, oh, I don't want to be a coward. I don't like this feeling. And then so he throws those negative feelings back at that guy in the form of criticism. You know, it's so cowardly. It's so cowardly. And, you know, when I see that happen, I see the Black Pillars do this. I see, unfortunately, a lot of normal people in the mainstream, they do that, because it's this whole culture of shaming people for being strong. These weak people, shaming people for trying to be strong and bring them back down to their level. Fuck that. Fuck that. That's exactly what's wrong with this world. That's exactly why this world isn't as great as it could be. It's weak people lording over their power over strong people and trying to bring them down to their level. That's why I'm so and passionate about the Black Pill and fighting against it, because that's exactly what it is. It's weak men trying to bring down strong men to their level.
Wow, I never made that connection with dating. Like, I've seen it aside from just other things, you know, just demasculating men in general, you know, like all the terminologies that they talk nowadays. But I never thought about that in dating, where it's like why men do that to other men. But now you putting that together makes sense. Makes whole sense. Oh, that's the overall idea why they do that. That's pretty sick.
and look, I can't take credit for it, because it's like, you know, the way that I look at it is I'm almost kind of repackaging Nietzsche and Aristotle more specifically, taking their findings and then sort of putting it in a modern context, right? So, you know, for all the content that I create, I study like 10 times more, because, you know, but this is really kind of cool. The cool part about philosophy is some of the smartest people who have ever lived have already come up with solutions for some of the world's biggest problems.
Mhm.
You just have to go out there and find it and try to, you know, personalize it and put it in the context of your specific life, or maybe a society as a whole, right? So guys like Nietzsche, guys like Aristotle, guys like, you know, I
Plato,
guess,
Socrates.
yeah, Socrates, Carl Jung. Nietzsche was actually very critical of Socrates. I actually like Socrates, but you know, Nietzsche was kind of critical about everybody.
Yeah.
But you know, there's these great thinkers of the past who, you know, have really just come up with solutions to so many of these different things. Because we like to think like, oh, we live in this special time. And it's like, you know, human nature, it takes a long time for human nature to change from an evolutionary standpoint. So it's so funny, like you read these texts from before Jesus was even born, right? 2,300 or 2,400 years ago, Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. And you're reading it as if it's like, oh, somebody might have written this yesterday. like that's how like that's like how profound it is. And or if you read Plato and then you see Socrates and his dialectics and his dialogues with other people, you're just like, this looks like a conversation I could see a bunch of old men having at fucking you know, coffee shop or something.
Like, next door.
yeah. So that's why it's so cool. It almost feels like you're being put in a time machine and, you know, just thrown back thousands of years, and they're still talking about things that they're talking about things back then that we're talking about now, except that these guys, their ideas and their solutions were so profound and so good that people kept passing on these ideas throughout generations and generations for thousands of years. That's how valuable their insights were.
Teachings,
Yeah. And so, you know, instead of us trying to like, of course, it's important for us to discuss ideas and stuff and within a modern context, but we have to remember that there's people in the past that really figure this stuff out already. And we just have to have the courage and then have the care about these topics enough to go search for the answers. So that's what I try to do with my channel is, again, just try to take these ideas from the past and then put them in a modern context.
Yeah, there was somebody once said, and they put it very well, it's like all the ideas that humanity has ever had is like in a library, right? There's millions of books and stuff like that, and you can learn from history and everything, but everything is like everybody, if you thought of it, somebody's also thought about it in a different context.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And in a way, that's me as a creative person. At first I hear that and I'm like, oh, that kind of sucks. I want to come up with creative new ideas. But the realist in me rejoices at that, because it's like, well, any problem that I'm going through, somebody's probably found a solution to it. I just got to find it.
Yeah.
And with the power of the internet, that's possible now. It's awesome.
No, that's a good point. That's exactly what I do. Whenever I do a problem, I'm like, YouTube probably has the answer. Let's go look it up.
Yeah, it's really awesome, man. And you know, that's why I'm still kind of hopeful for the future. I just think, you know, again, especially in a culture where there's going to be more weak people than strong people, it's always kind of been that way. But especially now, it's like the difference is the weak people are in power, right? And the weak people try to lord their power over potentially strong people and push them down before they even have the opportunity to become strong. And so it's more so like, I think we need to make sure that we can create environments and societies that allow people to become strong, and then those people become our leaders, right? And almost at the ground floor of this, almost like ground zero, I should say, of this sort of battlefield of weak versus strong is, in a way, the manosphere, right? It's just like if there's a small community of like actual hopeful guys who like really want to try to change their lives and take personal responsibility, versus like an entire army of freaking black-pilled incel negative dudes.
It's 300
right?
Sparta.
That's basically it. That's what it feels like. That's what it feels like sometimes. It's like it's like the 300 Spartans versus like the entire, you know, Persian army.
Yeah.
That's literally what it feels like. And then just keep, you know, it sucks, but it's okay. It's still it's a fight worth fighting.
Yeah.
You know, and no matter how much, you know, how negative these dudes and stuff get, we still gotta fight back. We still gotta try to be positive, and we still gotta, you know, more than anything, be willing to have contend our ideas, right? Because this is where a lot of the people that positive people screw up, is they try to be positive without telling the negative people why their ideas are wrong. You know, you need to be, if you want to be a leader, you need to be willing to do that. And so that's why, like, people like myself, Alex, Playing with Fire, we are willing to debate any of these guys, you know? And I think that's important, because in order for you to have perspective on what's good, you need to know what's bad. You need to know what a good idea is. If you want to know what a good idea is, you need to have a bad idea to compare it to.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of times in debates, that's a good way to see it, is like, this guy is just talking like an idiot, and he's just being a coward and coping. And this guy's actually telling the truth and talking about personal responsibility. He's telling me truths that are not as comfortable to hear, but it's the truth. And this guy's just spouting bullshit. Right. So that's why the marketplace of ideas, is important to compare them, and not to say, oh, my truth versus, you know, your truth. They're all equally valid. It's like, no, they're not.
It's like if somebody were to say, somebody who values money more than people versus money, you know what I'm saying? One value is going to be higher than the other.
Yeah. And you should be willing to have a discussion. Like, if you genuinely think that money is more valuable than people, I want to have a discussion. First of all, I want to know your reasoning why. And then based on that, I want to tell you my reasoning why I think people are more important than money. And we don't need to get all emotional or angry and stuff about it. We can have a rational discussion about it, you know? But yeah, most people don't want to do that. They've already decided what the truth is, and then they don't want to have a discussion.
Yeah.
So,
would you consider yourself more on the red pill side, or would you say you're with something different? Because you're trying to seek the truth in the Matrix, like you talked about it before. In the Matrix, you're always trying to seek the truth. You're trying to break away from getting plugged in, and you're trying to get to that next level. So would you say you're more on that red pill side, or are you something else? And I say something else because, like you said, the red pill has been tarnished with these I would say, like, fake kings in power, and they're pretty much spewing negative ideas. So I'm just kind of curious where you're at in that.
Yeah. So from the context of the red pill as it's supposed to be, in terms of seeking the truth and just seeing for the world for how it actually is. Yeah, absolutely. I would put myself in line with the red pill. And, you know, sometimes people are just like, well, why are you so passionate about defending some metaphor for some movie? If people studied Carl Jung or understand who he is, they would understand why. Because, you know, basically the idea is, you know, Carl Jung had this idea of the collective unconscious, which is basically the unconscious drives that all of us human beings share. And one of the ways that it's reflected in our culture is through archetypes, right? And so, you know, you'll see these certain themes throughout different cultures that may have never interacted with one another that are very similar. It's because of the archetypes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so something like the Matrix, for example, with the red pill, right? There's an archetypal story there of actually, like, seeking the truth and being empirical about your world, and saying that there's value in seeing the world for how it is, and there's value in not being willfully ignorant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so me simply just abandoning that message because a bunch of ideologues just bastardized it for their own personal gain. You know, I don't use the term red pill as much, but when people say, are you red pill? I say absolutely. But I always have to make the distinction that I'm red pilled from the true sense, and I explain what the red pill is, of simply seeking the world for how it is. Right?
Oh, okay.
It's a real shame that these manosphere guys just bastardize that term. It really is, because it's such a powerful metaphor for, the Matrix movie is way more than just an entertaining movie, man.
Yeah.
Because it really speaks to, you know, it's a hero's journey. It's a hero's, you know, it's almost like a religious experience in a way, right? It sounds silly to say that, but from a Jungian standpoint, that makes sense because it's appealing to certain archetypes that we all know to be fundamentally true. And to bastardize that, it's not cool, man. Yeah, it's a damn shame.
Well, that's why you're here fighting the good fight.
So yeah, I think you know, yeah, because you know, when I'm doing this now, I don't even like expect. I do kind of fantasize sometimes of thinking, you know, well, maybe this movement will really take hold and it'll influence a bunch of people and it'll change the world. But sometimes realistically, I think maybe it's not possible to do that. And I know that probably sounds pretty black pill to me to say, but I think regardless of that, it's a meaningful pursuit for me to do it anyway. And even if, let's say I can only, you know, ideally in my fantasies, I influence millions of people. Let's say I only influence like, I don't know, a few thousand. That's still meaningful because like I said before, those 1,000 people can influence other 1,000 people. You know, if the same way that Rollo Tomasi influenced one Myron Gaines and spread a toxic ideology amongst a bunch of people, maybe somehow the things that I say, again, just using the wisdom of Aristotle and Nietzsche, maybe it can influence one person who could be way more influential than me. Maybe that's my role in the universe. I don't know. You know, regardless, I know deep down in my heart and my soul that me fighting against this black pill is like, it's meaningful. I should be doing it. Right. It's a fight worth doing regardless of the results. So
there's people, I mean, you are doing good. And I've seen some of your comments. Like sometimes I'll watch your video and then I'll scroll to your comment section. And there are people will say like, oh, I was black pill. Then I saw Kevin Ray Wilder video showed up somehow. And then it kind of took me away from that and I'm living a better life. So there is, you know,
I wish I could see more of those comments. I don't see that many.
It's not common, but I see them once in a while. I'm like, oh, see, cool. So
once in a while, it's a key word. I hope I could see it more. But to anyone watching this or like, because you know, one of the reasons that I'm pretty combative in my comment section. It's not. I mean, sometimes the guys just piss me off, but usually, you know, I'm a pretty level-headed guy, so. Even if they piss me off, I'll step back for a bit and then I won't say anything. And then I'll come back to comment. Usually the reason that I comment back to these guys is because I care about what the people coming in think. Again, the people I'm trying to influence are the guys that are on the brink of becoming black pill. Right. And so if somebody makes a criticism, if one of these black pillars makes a criticism of the video or of me, in order to discredit my ideas, right? Like I need to come in and defend it so that the person, because I don't know about you guys, but like I always go to the comment section of almost every video that I watch. And so if I get this perception that like the entire comment section thinks this guy's stupid, maybe this guy is stupid. Maybe I should follow these black pill guys instead. You know, that's like the worst freaking thing ever, you know? So maybe I should encourage, because here's another thing too. The black pill guys, they have nothing else better to do than to just complain and leave negative comments online. So it's kind of like Twitter. You just get this perception that there's all these angry people everywhere. The reality is there's very few of them, very few. The vast majority of my audience is not like negative. Like the vast majority of for every black pillar that comments something negative, there's at least 10 people that really enjoyed my video. But they're normal people, so they just like it and leave. Like for me, I watch tons of YouTube videos, but I almost never comment. I'll just like it and be like, this is awesome. And then I head out of there. Right. So for the not just for my sake, but for the sake of people coming in, if you're one of those guys that are just like already more hopeful and just, you know, like what I have to say, just leave a positive comment or if you see some black pillar saying something really stupid, I much prefer it if somebody in my audience tells them why they're stupid rather than me having to go in and tell them why they're stupid. You know?
Yeah.
So to anybody listening to this, that's one way that you can contribute to the good fight, I guess, is, and not just in my comment section, just because any of these black pill guys, like they're sick, right? They're sick and they're contagious, and they can spread that negativity to other people. And so your best way of helping to suppress it is to, tell them why their idea is wrong in a nice way. You don't need to be a dick about it. There you go.
Idea suck. Get out of here.
I mean, that's an effective rhetorical strategy sometimes. But you have to remember who you're trying to influence. Right?
Yeah.
So like if you're trying to influence the people who are on the fence, more than likely they're going to follow the people that they think are nicer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys, but like, who would you rather follow? A guy that's like super angry and mad and saying why all these things are wrong, or another person that's like on the other side that's like a bit more chill? It's like, man, why is this guy so angry? Why is this so pissed off? Yeah. So being respectful even to your enemies, it's easier said than done. I still fuck it up sometimes too. Sometimes I'm just a complete dick to my enemies. But like, it's something that I personally want to get better at myself, because I understand sometimes that could come at the expense of people truly understanding my message if they think that I'm just some combative asshole, so.
You want to say something?
No, I just got the rapid fire.
All right, want to do rapid fire?
All right, okay. We're going to start transitioning towards the end of the podcast. So,
okay.
What we do with our guests, we have just 5 quick rapid fire questions that we'll ask. So yeah, let's see.
That might be tough with me because I tend to give long-winded answers. I'll try to keep it very short.
No, don't worry about it. Yeah, if you happen to go off on a tangent, go ahead.
Okay. I'll try to keep it short. Yeah.
Okay. So first one is favorite color.
Oh, that's an easy one. What if I just like, well, actually, what Nietzsche believed about color? No, I'm joking. I would say, this is a weird one. I'd say royal purple. So not like the girly purple, not like the light purple, not even dark purple, like a royal purple, like you'd see like on the cape of like a king,
Oh, it's
like a darker purple.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Favorite number.
I haven't thought of that. I don't know. I want to say 7, but I feel like everybody says 7. Shit. Is 0 an option?
That's cool.
I feel like 0.
Cool. That's a new one. So that's cool.
0 is kind of like the most alpha of the numbers. It's like you do like 8 times 0, 0, right? Everything else gets negated by 0. So it's the most alpha number there is. So that's
the light alpha.
Actually, in this case, it might be like the freaking, I don't even know. It might just be like the alpha. Right?
The omega.
The alpha and omega is literally God. It's the God.
All right. Favorite wrestler growing up.
Favorite wrestler. I didn't get too much into wrestling, but it's the most generic thing. But The Rock. I don't know.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
I mean, back when I was a kid,
mm-hmm.
He was. He was the shit. This is before he even got into acting and stuff. And I mean, I still think he's cool now, but it's a bit different.
Yeah.
You say The Rock now, people are just like, oh, really? But yeah, like back in the day, WWE, he was like a huge deal.
Yeah, like
before he got famous.
The newer generation calls him Dwayne now instead of The Rock. By his actual first name, it throws me off.
Yeah, that's weird. No,
that's
not Dwayne.
I'm like, who?
No, that's not Dwayne. That's not Dwayne. That's The Rock. Yeah.
I did have a question, but you already answered it, so I'm gonna ask you a different one.
Okay.
Have you visited the Bay Area, like ever? Like California, the Bay Area?
I haven't. I've been to LA.
Okay.
And I have a lot of friends actually from the Bay Area, or I even have a few that are still currently living there. So
oh, sick.
I haven't been though. I know it's very expensive to live in.
Yeah. We got episodes on that.
Yeah, we have like a lot of episodes on that.
I heard from my friends living there that even like, because Oakland used to be the more sort of like affordable place, but even Oakland is getting really expensive now too, right?
Yeah, because it got
basically everywhere.
gentrified pretty much.
Yeah. No, I've never been though, man. I'd love
nice.
to go there sometime. I have a lot
One
of
day, man.
friends.
One day.
Come over here, we'll get a beer.
Oh yeah, man. Dude, all of my, I don't know, is San Francisco like extremely Hispanic? Because every single one of my friends from there are all Hispanic.
It has its boroughs, but
Yeah,
I would say it has a lot of
Latinos.
especially at the heading more south.
Like towards the Mission, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like at the south end of San Francisco, it's a lot of them for sure.
Yeah, because I can think of like 10 friends from there, and all of them are, you know.
Sick.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man. I like it.
For sure. And then I guess last one is favorite musician you're listening to right now, like artist.
Oh, man, I'm like I have such a variety. I don't even know where to start. So one music group I guess I really like is The Midnight. Do you know who The Midnight is by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
They're awesome, man. Highly suggest. It's like retro synth. It sounds like 80s music, but it's not. It's hard to explain, but they're like it's really good.
I might have to check.
Everybody who's listened to The Midnight, they're just like, this slaps. I like this. It's kind of like all right. So the perfect way to describe it is this: if you're like driving around at night and it just rained and the pavement's still wet and you see like the lights and stuff reflecting off the pavement and there's like nobody around and then you're driving. If there was a music to describe that, it's The Midnight.
What?
I know that's highly specific, but if you listen to it, you'll kind of understand what I mean when I say that.
I'm like, all right, Kevin, you're right. I'm gonna have to check it out now for sure. That's interesting. But yeah, those are all my rapid fire questions.
I'm good.
Okay.
Nice.
I can.
That's good, man.
I guess on that note, we wanted to say thank you again for all the work you do, for coming out to the podcast, giving us a chance. We really appreciate
We
that.
do have one more question.
Of course.
What size T-shirt are you?
Depends on on how fat I am. If it's bulking season or cutting down season, I would say a large. Yeah.
Large? Okay.
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 No, go ahead.
Oh, it's because we give every guest a shirt, a unique shirt. So we just want to make sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I'll definitely wear that around. I'll wear it in one of my videos.
Hell yeah.
Is it like a specific, like specifically to your podcast?
Every guest that we have on, we always give them just kind of like a thank you because we do value your time and your energy and your input. So we just it's just kind of like a little gift from us to you.
Awesome, man, dude. That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah.
And I guess the last question too is where can people find you on social media?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so basically, I send everybody to YouTube. You know, I still have Instagram and stuff, but you know, I've gotten caught in some internet drama and my Instagram got deleted.
Mm-hmm.
You guys know what I'm talking about, right? With
yeah.
Okay.
I know what Alex.
yeah. But if anybody ever needs to contact me, just kevinraywalder@gmail.com. That should always be fine because, you know, you never know what's going to happen with YouTube. I'd imagine it should be fine. I don't post super controversial things, but you never know. So, yeah, Kevin Ray Walder on YouTube or kevinraywalder@gmail.com works if you want to contact me directly.
Thank you again for your time.
Okay,
we had a really good
pleasure,
time.
man. This is great. I love this. This is a fun time.
Yeah, this is cool, man. So thank you, man. Enjoy the rest of your night. Appreciate you again, man. Talk to you soon, man.
See you.
Thanks.